Don't look now, but the NFL draft will be here before you know it. What selections will the Ravens make? What positions could the Ravens be going after? We touch on all that and more next on Ravens Talk.
Look, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk podcast. Follow us on Instagram, on YouTube for the broadcast. Say this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk, this the Raven Talk podcast. Not old news, this is new news to the whole world where they ball at. Come and listen to the former writer for the Baltimore Sports Illustrated.
There should be no team, no NFL fan base more excited about the upcoming draft than the Baltimore Ravens. Headed by Eric DeCosta, this team continues to hit time and time again on these drafts, and 2025 appears to be no different. Welcome to Ravens Talk. I'm your host, Njoku. In this episode, we will talk about the offseason. Lots of big decisions and lots of big transactions have already been made at the behest of the Baltimore Ravens. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on the NFL draft. Lots and lots of decisions to be made. 11 selections, 11 chances to bolster this roster. But first, we will talk about the Mark Andrews saga because this tight end room has been a topic of conversation for months. And this all started with the division round loss to the Buffalo Bills. I'm not the guy that's going to sit here and target Mark Andrews for his performance. A lot of guys had poor performances. Brandon Stevens didn't have a great game in that contest. Of course, he's no longer a Raven. Mark Andrews had some okay plays, 2 decisions by himself. Well, not 2 decisions, 2 plays. 1 decision came at the behest of a fumble that occurred because he wouldn't go down. Slippery conditions should have told him to get down with the football and let the fight another down. Instead, the turnover happened and it really cost him big time. The second, more obvious play that everyone's talking about is the drop 2-point conversion, where it was right in his hands and he just dropped it. Ever since then, fans have been clamoring for Mark Andrews to be traded, released, whatever. And I'm in that realm of conversation, but for different reasons. And I want to make sure we touch on this correctly to get all the facts out so that, Ravens fans aren't, at my head about my comments. Here are the facts. Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, all under contract for the 2025 season. None of them are under contract in 2026. That is huge. A conversation that isn't talked about enough. You have potentially a chance where you have no tight ends under contract in 2026, which means you need to get one or more of these guys signed to a contract before the start of the free agency period in 2026, which means there's a potential case that could be made that you put the franchise tag on one of these guys. The obvious candidate would be Isaiah Likely, but you don't want to be in that situation. And you're in that situation right now, heading towards the 2026 season. You can't give a contract to Isaiah Likely right now. You can't say, okay, we're going to offer you a contract with Mark Andrews still on the roster. Why? Because Mark Andrews is tight end 1. I mean, he's earned that respect. It wouldn't look good for you to offer Isaiah Likely a contract over Mark Andrews when Mark Andrews has no years left on his contract. This is the last year in his deal, similar to Charlie Kolar and Isaiah Likely. Can't offer the contract to Mark Andrews because you do that, Isaiah Likely is going to feel slighted. Well, where's my contract? I've earned, some monetary advancements due to my level of play, and I agree with that. So you're in a boat where you can't offer anyone a contract until you get the situation resolved with Mark Andrews. If you're going to keep both, that's fine. I don't agree with the decision, but at least from a roster setup standpoint, contractually speaking, I can dig with that. I can see a situation where, okay, we're offering Mark Andrews a chance to stay. We're offering Isaiah Likely a chance to stay. We'll go Charlie Kolar a chance to stay as well. But right now, we're just not focused on that. But that's not the message we're getting from the Ravens. We've already heard from Eric DeCosta twice now. Most recently, he, spun the narrative. We love Mark Andrews. He's a warrior. He's going to remain a Raven. He's a great player. We're going to try and keep him. That's the gist of it. That's not verbatim what he said, but the message he's giving is we're not going to trade him for peanuts. If you want him, you're going to have to pay for him with draft compensation or another player. I'm assuming that's where the Ravens' heads are at as we approach the draft. And I agree with that notion. You can't just give away a tight end who led the league in touchdown catches, I should say, last season. You can't. He led all tight ends with 11 touchdowns. He is proven to be a great weapon, especially in the red zone, where a lot of teams struggle. Not the Ravens, obviously, but a lot of teams struggle in the red zone. Mark Andrews could bolster the passing attack of teams that struggle in the red zone with a big body tight end who knows how to work the zone coverages of opposing defenses. Before the draft started, Mark Andrews was available for trade. And when I say available, I mean the Ravens were fielding calls from other franchises for his services. They weren't getting what they were looking for. Teams are trying to shortball him. A lot of teams knew the roster situation, the contract situations. They know the chances of the Ravens keeping all 3 tight ends that are currently on the roster, it's slim. It's a slim chance. So they are going to try and shortchange the Ravens in compensation. And the Ravens, I don't know if they were expecting that. I know his performance in the divisional round was lacking, so I'm sure the selling point for Andrews wasn't as high as it might have been had it been the game prior, but still, I'm sure the Ravens were looking, and I know the Ravens are looking for, at minimum, a day 2 pick for Andrews. And they weren't getting that. They were getting day 3 picks, combinations of such, and they weren't biting. And I respect them for that. But we're getting into the weeds of this thing, and we're nearing the point of no return here with Mark Andrews, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the Ravens are not going to cut Mark Andrews. I'd be shocked if the Ravens cut Mark Andrews. He does the Ravens no favors to cut him. They've already given him his roster bonus, the $4 million that he was due. A lot of people assumed that $4 million bonus would kind of diminish any chances of them trading him. That's not true. The Ravens could enter this draft trading Mark Andrews if a tight end needed team aren't able to hit on Tyler Warren or Loveland or whoever they're looking at. So there's 2 first-round tight ends here. If those 2 gets taken away, and I'm hearing that there are certain teams, the Rams could be trading up for a tight end. The Chargers, a team that we all know will love to get a tight end. They've been mocked to grab one of these 2 tight ends. The Cowboys, another team, may fall in love with someone else and hope that another tight end falls. If that doesn't happen, a trade could be made. Micah Parsons is yet to sign a contract. So you're starting to see some wheeling and dealing potentially. The Ravens aren't the only team now. The Ravens are not the only team with a tight end that could be on the move. The 49ers have George Kittle. He hasn't signed his contract. That's the guy that could be on the move as well. So, there are fans that think that Mark Andrews is going to play in 2025. And that's not necessarily the case. We don't know that for sure. And I think it has more to do with the contract situation, the level of play that Isaiah Likely has portrayed these last 2 seasons. All of that plays into account. So I think this is going to be one of those drafts where, who knows, we saw with Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown got traded for a first-round draft pick. Ravens used that pick to get Tyler Linderbaum. Superb trade. Murder Costa. I don't expect a first-round, trade for Andrews, but 3rd-round pick, maybe 2nd-round pick if you're really, fighting for a tight end. Who knows? But the Ravens have that opportunity. Do not be surprised that Mark Andrews gets traded before the start of the season is what I'm saying. That $4 million bonus does not signify the end of trade talks with Mark Andrews. Andrews has already gone on record and on ESPN and stated that he is a Raven right now. He blamed the drop on the 2-point conversion on wet gloves. Sure, I guess. Everybody's gloves are wet. Everybody was playing football in the same weather. You got to make the catch. And he said that. He has to make that catch. It is what it is. I'm not totally putting that loss on Mark Andrews. He has some of that blame. He has to own some of that. But there are a lot of issues in that game, things that have progressed throughout the season that reared its head during that contest. That's usually the way it goes, in these things. So I'm not putting the total blame on Mark Andrews, but I think it's time for the Ravens to move on. And the NFL draft is another opportunity for the Ravens to make their roster better. And hopefully they get some compensation that they're looking for Mark Andrews. Let me get back. We'll touch on the draft. We talked about the draft in terms of Mark Andrews, but there's selections to be made, baby. Ravens pick 27. Could they trade up for a guy? Could they trade back? Will they use all 11 picks? We'll touch on that next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. As you mentioned, the NFL draft is approaching fast and furiously. The Ravens have 11 draft picks to work with. We know the Ravens already have a roster built for a championship. They have 11 chances to improve upon this roster, and they have picked 27. And we know the Ravens routinely pick in the bottom third of drafts. This year is no different, but the draft class is set up in a way that a lot of great players could potentially fall on the Ravens' lap. Time and time again, we talk about this. This year definitely is that class that we could talk about potentially having lots of steals for the Ravens to choose from. Now, what positions will the Ravens be after? We talked about this for months. If you're following on social media, lots of positions the Ravens could be looking after. Again, Ravens are set with this roster, but looking at depth, looking at the future, there's some positions that could be attacked. Edge rusher is the sexy pick. Everybody's been talking about edge rusher. We saw what the Eagles were able to do against the Kansas City Chiefs. Just manhandled them. The Ravens have a pass rush, second in the league in sacks, but a lot of that was coverage based. A lot of that was, getting after the quarterback, but not consistent enough for the Ravens. I agree. The Ravens pass rush does have, they could be improved upon. We have Kyle Van Noy, who continues to beat Father Time. How much longer can he do that remains to be seen. Odafe Oweh, just coming off a double-digit sack year, last year of his deal. Do the Ravens feel confident enough in his ability, even though he had a double-digit sack year, to give him the money that he's going to command in free agency? And Odafe Oweh, believe it or not, will command some dollars. And so we have to find out if the Ravens are going to do that. If they decide, if they know now they're not going to be able to pay him, could he be a trade candidate? Could he bolster the edge room by giving him away for someone else? Maybe for a move up in a draft to get a guy that they really like. We don't know what the Ravens' plans are. I would probably say not likely that they trade Odafe Oweh in the draft, but who knows because of the way this draft is setting up for them. So edge rusher seems to be the sexy pick. It seems to be the sexy pick, and there's some potential guys that we'll talk about in the later parts of the show that they can go after. Offensive line, interior offensive line. The Ravens will tell you up and down, we like our guys. We like our guys. Angie Voorhees and Daniel Falele left a lot to be desired on film. Daniel Falele found ways to improve, but he's still a liability against those stunts and double moves and things of that nature. Tyler Linderbaum was affected tremendously by the lack of experience on both sides, left and right. Patrick McCary was the left guard for the majority of the season. He is no longer a Raven. You assume because of the success of Angie Voorhees in that last game of the season against the Browns in the regular season, I should say, that they may give him the opportunity to win that job. But you would be more comfortable if the Ravens were to bring in an offensive lineman that you knew could play ball, that you knew would be athletic enough to handle the stunts that you assume will come the Ravens' way again in 2025. So interior offensive line, not the sexy pick, but knowing that your team is pretty much built for a championship now, it makes sense to build within the trenches. A lot of Ravens fans have talked about building within the trenches a lot. Hard to disagree. Interior defensive line. Nnamdi Madubuike, stud. The stats didn't show it this year, but man, oh man, did he receive those double and triple teams. Travis Jones was there to provide some pass rushing assistance as well, but you can't have him on the field 24/7 with Nnamdi Madubuike. And Michael Pierce, a guy who was very good in that rotation, retired. So you want to fill that role. There's some good interior defensive linemen in the draft that the Ravens can go after. Would they spend the first round pick on them or even a day 2 pick? We will see, but definitely a move that can be made to bolster the interior of this defensive line. Again, win in the trenches. The Ravens have done a good job of being the bullies across the league for years, but you could use some more bullies in their arsenal. So we'll see what they do. Safety. The safety is a big concern. We saw what the lack of safety play did for this defense in the early goings of the season. Marcus Williams was a travesty. Eddie Jackson was a disappointment. So much so that they had to move Kyle They had to move Kyle Hamilton from his position of big nickel for the majority of the snaps back to deep safety. And the improvement was there, but they lacked pressure. They lacked turnovers because he wasn't disrupting. We need disruptors on this defense. We talk about disruptors all the time. The Eagles have disruptors galore in 2024. Kyle Hamilton was a big part of that. So the Ravens will love to move Kyle Hamilton back to his position of success, or even draft someone else to be that disruptor. And so there's a couple of safeties in this draft, in the first and second rounds of this draft, that might be available for the Ravens to work with. We will see if the Ravens go and attack the safety position. We'll talk about what guys could be available in the later portions of the episode, but safety is definitely a position of need. We'll see what they do. Cornerback is another one. They got Awuzie, they got Marlon Humphrey, they got Nate Wiggins, they got TJ Tampa. You can never have enough corners in this league. The Ravens have a good shot to keep Marlon Humphrey in the slot where he has success, in that nickel spot, the interior of this defense where he likes to get physical and have that success. So if you trust Awuzie, fine. But I don't know. I think another corner could be of service, an outside corner, to give them some oomph in that corner room. Also, Marlon Humphrey did not sign an extension this offseason. He restructured his contract, which means his availability for 2026 is now officially in doubt. Could they use this draft selection in round 1 or the early day 2 pick to really bolster this corner room and give them some relief in case the inevitable happens and Marlon Humphrey moves on? The corner's another position that we may need to pay attention to. Again, Humphrey's there. Calvin Oy's there. Odafe always there. You know, you got Kyle Hamilton. So you got these positions locked up, and premier position players at that. But you have 11 picks. You have a chance to make this team even better. Use that first round pick, that second round, third round pick to make it happen. So we'll see what the Ravens do. Those are the main positions, in my opinion, that the Ravens need to look at in the early goings of these rounds, I should say. Receivers always a sexy pick. There's a couple of receivers in mock drafts that I've seen fall to them where, hey, who knows? You got Rashod, Bateman, and Zay Flowers, but Bateman only signed a 2-year extension. He probably outplayed his contract. He might be looking for a new contract. If you bring in a receiver, give you some depth just in case. You know you brought in Hopkins, but you'd love to get somebody else on that roster who you feel comfortable with in case there's injury. We saw what happened when Zay Flowers got injured. We assumed that the Ravens would be able to weather the storm, so to speak, after that injury to Zay Flowers, but you saw that that offense lacked a little bit of punch, and a lot of that was because of Zay Flowers' absence. So getting another receiver in there who you know could potentially give the defense fits would be huge. So, but those other positions are really my main targets, and I'm sure that's where the Ravens are looking at. When we get back, we'll talk about what players in the first round we could be targeting, what players we've heard the Ravens could be targeting, but maybe we should steer away from, and I'll tell you why next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Again, the NFL draft approaching very quickly. A lot of fans are speculating, wondering, hoping for their favorite guy to land in the purple and black. Where do the Ravens go? Well, let's take a look at some players, because there is a chance that a great player could fall to the Ravens. We'll start at edge rusher. A lot of fans are just gung-ho on the edge rusher, and I get it. You want a pass rusher. You got Myles Garrett with the Browns, TJ Watt with the Steelers, Trey Hendrickson, as at this moment, is still a Bengal, but that could change. But for the most part, you got 3 teams in your division, all with premier pass rushers. The case can be made that Odafe Oweh is taking the next step, but you really want a disruptor at the edge position, and that's where my mind is at with this draft. Yes, it would be fantastic if an edge rusher lands with the Baltimore Ravens, but you got to understand, a lot of these guys that are considered edge rushers and are, have a grade that will behest a team in the lower half of the first round to grab them, they have holes in their game. Abdul Carter, for sure, out of Penn State, number 1 edge rusher in this draft class. I mean, he has supreme abilities. His moveset is awesome. He has bend, the likes of which we haven't seen in quite some time in this draft. Mike Green out of Marshall, a little bit of baggage, a little bit of off the field issues early on in his career may, prevent the Ravens from maybe pulling the trigger because of the Justin Tucker stuff. He is an exceptional edge rusher. He's on par, in my opinion, in pass rushing ability with an Abdul Carter. It may not have quite the run defense that Abdul Carter has, but Mike Green is another option where you could probably take a shot. And that's it, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm not willing to make that push for these other edge rushers not really a big if, but if the other position groups we talked about earlier in the show and their premier players at these positions are available. So to make a long story short, if there's a premier offensive lineman, premier safety, premier corner, available, in premier interior defensive lineman that you see that falls to the Ravens at 27, I'm not sure I'm willing to pull the trigger on a Shamar Stewart if one of these other guys are available. If a Donovan Njoku is available, those guys have holes to their game. Small, lack of production. Shamar Stewart, phenomenal athlete. His moveset is limited, So, these are all projects, but are you going to take a project in the first round or take someone that is going to likely be an all-pro at another position? So that's where my head's at with the Ravens. Ravens love to take best player available. I'm not sure if you're going to take a pick on James Pierce when there's a guy like Tyler Booker at offensive line, or a guy like Malaki Starks at safety. So something to think about if you're a Ravens fan who are die-hard, gung-ho set on the edge rusher. I don't know if you pass on talent at other positions just to get an edge rusher in round one when you can get pretty decent edge rusher projects in rounds 2 and 3. That's my 2 cents. We touched on it, but let's go on ahead and dive in. The offensive line is a super sweet value spot for the Ravens. I think, in social media, I talked about how there isn't really a lot of interior offensive line, value or promise, in my opinion. I think there's 2 good interior offensive linemen with the first round's grade on my big board. And then a lot of Ravens fans set me straight. They said, not so fast, Sam. There's a lot of tackles that we believe could transition to guard and make a huge impact in the league. And I started looking at the tape, and boy, oh boy, were you guys right, and boy, oh boy, was I wrong. Plenty of linemen in this draft that could fall to 27 that I could see the Ravens making a play for. First of all, Will Campbell, first tackle that most likely will be selected. He looks better at guard. He's not even my best tackle offensive lineman, period, in this big board. And I've seen my favorite offensive lineman fall to 27, and that's Josh Simmons. So Josh Simmons, I think, could play tackle or guard. They'll probably start him at guard if he gets to 27 and then move him to tackle once, Ronnie Stanley retires or moves on, or if they decide to move, other tackles to the left side or what have you. Fact is, Josh Simmons would be a great pick. Tyler Booker, we talked about it just now, but, his moveset is very similar to that of Lele in some respects, and Voorhees, his ceiling isn't as low, his floor isn't as low. I think that he doesn't have quite the athleticism they were looking for. I think he has chances to make the same mistakes of Lele and Voorhees due to his limited athleticism. So I'm not so sure if Tyler Booker would be the move for me. I think the Ravens would be like, why would we get Tyler Booker when we have all the faith in the world that Daniel Faalele will begin to improve, even though Faalele is nearing the end of his contract as well. Something to think about there. But Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State University, oh boy, easily by far the best interior offensive lineman in this draft class. And I see him falling on almost all the boards. I don't know if the Ravens are going to hesitate to get this guy if he falls to them, and there's a good chance he does. I've seen him near the 18 mark start to get picked, 18, low teens, down to 27. So I don't know. Do you pass on Gray Zabel if he makes it to 27? I find it very difficult to see the Ravens doing that as well. Kelvin Banks, I've seen him get moved, picked up earlier, but he's also a guy that I can see the Ravens taking. Lots of great value at offensive line. There will be an offensive lineman available for the Ravens at 27 to choose from. That I can almost guarantee. Let's move on to interior defensive line. If the Ravens have a chance to improve upon the loss of Michael Pierce with some guys, I could see a guy like Derrick Harmon making it out of Oregon. I've seen him fall on lots of boards. I've seen him get picked up early. He has a limited skill set, some say. He's a disruptor. Go ahead and get that boy. And then my favorite position, safety. Ooh-wee. Ravens have a shot. Ravens have a shot at getting Malaki Starks. Mel Kiper made it well known now, but I've been on this train all along. If you follow me on social media, you know it to be true. Malaki Starks, almost all mock drafts have him going to the Ravens. Almost all of them. Now, some may say, well, we don't need a safety. We already have Kyle Hamilton. Malaki Starks can change the game. He could really force Kyle Hamilton to be moved back in. Darius Washington signed his tender, so you know he'll be back. But who knows what the future holds? You have a chance to get 3 safeties again and become this secondary that's been a problem for teams throughout the many years that the Ravens have been a franchise, albeit this past season was not the greatest for them, but I see them making waves to improve upon that mark. I think Malaki Starks would be a huge addition to this franchise. Nick Manwari, a guy with, the combine hero, I would say. I've seen a lot of guys link him to the Ravens. If they do draft him, I think this is the case where they keep Kyle Hamilton at deep safety and have Nick Manwari be that athletic guy to go in there and disrupt the line of scrimmage. But he's not playing like a safety right now. He scares me as safety. A lot of stuff that we saw from Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson, I see in his film. Of course, he's a rookie. There's chances to alleviate that, but why settle on a project with high upside? Don't get me wrong. He has high upside, but why settle on someone like that when you can get a sure thing, a guy who can play football and do it at a high level? Just pick him up and grab him. You have plenty of chances in the later rounds to get your projects and work on them and be that top-tier coach you claim to be. For right now, I say Starks is pretty much the go-ahead favorite. There's the safety out of Texas that is also a way better coverage safety than even maybe Malaki Starks that you can grab. And then there's Xavier Watts, Kevin Winston. Lots of value at safety in round 2. But I think Starks is probably that main safety that you go after if he's available. And the other guys, I think you let fall to the second round. You're worried that they're going to be, picked up early in the second round. They didn't get them. You got 11 picks. Why don't you go ahead and use those picks to get your guy? Maybe trade Mark Andrews away for a late day 2 pick and use that ammunition to trade up and grab a guy that you really like. But yeah, there's a lot of options for the Ravens to make noise. Cornerback, not so much in the first round. I think their 2 cornerbacks, including Jada Barron, is going to be very hard to get by. I'm not really high on Barron as much as everybody else. I want to make that selection and pick 27. There's a good chance he's not going to be available at 27 anyway. Not how I'm in anyway. But if he's available, I could see the Ravens making a move like that. Put him in a slot to prepare for the potential departure of Marlon Humphrey. But I would pretty much stay away from corner in round 1 unless one of the top 2 guys fall down for some reason, which I don't see happening. We'll close out the show coming up next, but I wanted to appreciate you guys for tuning in. It's been a long time coming with this draft, but we're very excited. We'll get closing thoughts next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Again, I appreciate you guys so much for joining us for this episode. Lots to talk about with the NFL draft. Lots of potential selections the Ravens can make at pick 27 and beyond. The Ravens have 11 picks, and I don't think they're going to use all 11. I think they're going to be using those picks as ammunition to move up and grab the guys they want. They have the roster already. They just need a couple of pieces here and there, bolster the depth a little bit, inject some youth, some talent into this roster, and make a push for their 3rd Lombardi trophy after having, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL the last 2 seasons. Certainly the best team in the AFC the last 2 seasons. Maybe 2024, the Eagles, you give it to them. But I think the Ravens are well positioned to have another fantastic campaign in 2025 and potentially have a Lombardi trophy hoisted over their heads. We'll see. That's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk. Again, appreciate you guys so much. We're going to have more draft coverage. We have a live stream coming up on day 1 of the draft. We're going to have it on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. So if you're listening in on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, be sure to tune into those social media platforms and listen in as we have a live stream of the draft. I'll be joined by Von Kane, a new member of my new podcast coming out called the Still Got It Podcast, where me and a couple of other co-hosts, including Von Kane, come and talk just not Ravens football, NFL throughout, the whole shebang. So if you're interested in my takes more so and my friends' takes more so about the Ravens, just everything in general concerning the NFL, opinions, news, stats, all of that, be sure to tune in. We'll have more information on that new podcast coming up shortly. Be sure to tune into that live stream for that. And day 3, I'll be co-hosting a live stream with the great Kim McCusick from Film Study Baltimore. You guys, if you're a Ravens fan, I'm sure you know him very well. We'll be dabbling into day 3 and getting our picks and selections and hopes in, and we'll talk about what the Ravens have done the previous 2 days of the draft. But be sure to tune in for that live stream. We'll be streaming live on Twitter as well. So again, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, be sure to tune in to Twitter, especially for that. I'll make sure to retweet that post so you know when we're up and running. But that will be coming at 12 o'clock Eastern time Saturday, so be sure to tune in for that. Again, that's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk. I appreciate you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
This is new news to the whole world where they ball at. Come and listen to the former writer for the Baltimore Sports Illustrated, telling you what's going on. If you ain't like it, then you been a hater. New way to see stat lines and them highlights. It was in